From Carry the Load, these are lessons from the front. Stories of service and sacrifice from our military, veterans, first responders, and their families.
You've likely heard the expression regarding someone taking a knife to a gunfight. The implication is that the person in question is, to put it kindly, ill-prepared. To be critical is to say that person lacks intelligence. But what about the one who takes a Nikon to a gunfight? The one who risks their own life to catch moments and snap photos which, when shown to the public, bring home the horrific reality of war from which the majority of our detached society is isolated. Well, after meeting Jeremy Locke, I call them trusting souls of courage. Jeremy is a veteran Air Force combat photographer who received accolades 7 times as the Military Photojournalist of the Year, and his images are nothing less than stirring. He was in the midst of multiple firefights and even received the Bronze Star when he put down his Nikon and switched to something more lethal to help in the recovery of an American soldier. Well, that certainly explains the courage part of military photography. As for the trusting soul part, take a listen and see if you draw the same conclusion. I would also encourage you to listen to his podcast, Last Letters, which can be found on all the major podcast venues. Like his photos, very moving. Now, here's my conversation with Jeremy Locke, and if you're so inclined, please share this with others.
I graduated high school and then went to Wright State University for just a little bit.
To Wright State?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know that I know their mascot. The Wright State.
That's a good question.
I do know the Dayton Flyers.
The reason why I don't really know is because college politely asked me to leave. So I didn't do too well in college and kind of failed out.
So the dean asked you?
Not personally, but they were like, yeah, it's time to go. Grades weren't there.
I mean, you're obviously not dumb.
No, thanks. I mean, I do have dumb moments. But no, I was rebellious, outgoing, I would say, just always pushing the limits, always looking for that fun time.
So school was not on your terms?
No, school was to socialize, to play sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw school.
I can relate very, very well. So how'd you end up in the Air Force then?
So I started working construction, and the guys I was working with had to go back into jail on the weekends. I was like, man, this life just isn't for me. I loved it. Honest day's work, honest day's pay. You're working with your hands, and you can actually see what you've built.
Yes.
And but I just thought there was something better. My father was a aeronautical engineer in the Air Force, so he helped develop.
Not smart at all.
Yeah, right. God, sitting down at the table doing math questions with him was just like tear jerkers, like really crying. Like, I don't understand. But I was like, that's a good profession. I'll try that. Yeah. My mom was a midwife, nurse practitioner, a bunch of stuff like that.
Okay.
So I was like, let's combine those and join the military. Let's be an X-ray technician. Do 4 years, get a good trade, and get out. Of course, you listen to your recruiter, and they're all, yeah, you'll get that. Went in open general and didn't get that. So I became an imagery processor. So the satellite imagery, the spy plane, the UT spy plane.
Okay.
I was the guy in the darkroom processing and printing that. And I was the guy who, the president, the unseen battlefield commanders, everybody was, the Pentagon were seeing those images. And this is like when Bosnia was going on. So it was very important to, like, I felt like I mattered and had that purpose of, wow, my what I'm doing is being seen. It's making a difference.
Yeah, very similar to the construction that you were talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then the career fields kind of started merging, and I picked up a camera and had some amazing mentors and just fell in love with photography and attended a couple workshops. And when I saw one of my favorite photographers, Mary Calvert, when I saw the true power of an image, if you think about it, 1/8,000th of a second can change the world. Not
1/8,000th
of a second. Video has to go 10 seconds for an actual clip. So 10, 20 seconds, a minute video. But I think 1/8,000, one shutter click can change the world. And she showed me the compassion and in telling other people's stories. And I was hooked. And you think about a photographer, a combat photographer, we're out there to capture combat, right? Well, I kind of looked at it different, again, through my mentors, through seeing some of these iconic photographs.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me an iconic photograph where you actually see a gun battle. I can't think of one because it's at a distance. It's pops of smoke somewhere. I had a gentleman, and I wish it was at a combat camera reunion, and I really wished I could attribute him and his name. But he looked over at me, he goes, Jeremy, to truly capture combat is to capture it on the soldier's face next to you.
Ooh.
Right?
Ooh.
So now think about those iconic photos that we've seen. Napalm Girl running, to there's a famous guy that says war is hell on the helmet.
Yes.
All these iconic photographs, their eyes and their faces, there's these moments that aren't necessarily the gun battle. And that has stuck with me to this day. No matter what I photograph, it's pet of the week. It's like, what are they feeling?
The other photo that came to mind when you said that was, I think it was the Spanish Civil War. There was a man that was coming up over a hill or coming down the hill. I can't remember, but it's emblazoned in my mind. And he had obviously just been hit.
Yep. And you see his arm go back,
Yes.
and he's kind of wearing like a cap,
Yes.
like a round cap with the,
Absolutely.
I know what you're, God, why is that name's driving me nuts right now.
And I couldn't tell you
But yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, those are the two that come to mind when I think in terms of just kind of obscure, just snap of the finger, and 1/8,000th of a second.
Absolutely. Right. And there's a lot of luck in there too, but
Sure.
But those individuals were in the right place at the right time and had the right skills to capture that.
And they were willing to be in that position. And I think that that's one of the things that I really admire about your profession.
Yeah.
Did you ever find yourself where you're just like, what in the world am I doing?
I don't think I ever looked at it upon like, oh my God, why am I here? Or what? I looked at it like, oh my God, I'm here. This is cool, right? And I know it's kind of in a sick way. And not only do I carry a camera, I'm also a combatant. I carry a gun.
Okay.
So most of the time I would carry a 9mm. A lot of other combat camera guys, they'd carry, the rifle and all that kind of stuff. But I chose because I was on aircrew status, to carry a 9mm. And if it really got hairy, there's going to be a weapon next to me that I can pick up. And I've had to pick up.
So it has gotten hairy for you.
It has gotten hairy, but I've never had to fire back, thank God. But yeah, it's to the point where I look around and go, oh my God, I get to tell these brave men and women's stories. That to me is the greatest thing I think I've ever done in my life is to be on a battlefield or humanitarian conditions and show what our great men and women that wear that uniform are doing in the world. And what's even more important is when, you see them down the road and they're like, yeah, your picture made my newspaper. My mom loved it. And I mean, that touches me. There's a great responsibility and a great honor with it. But yeah, it's always been like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting here seeing Uday's lions for the first time. We're feeding them, and
Well, okay, so tell people about Uday's lions. I know who Uday is. I somewhat know that he had lions, but give everybody the background to that, because I think that's a fascinating piece, and I want to come back to a couple other things that you mentioned in that as well.
Yeah, sure.
So Uday, one of Saddam's sons.
Yeah, his palace was located right next to Saddam's in Baghdad. We were one of the first ones. I think I was the famous statue that came down of Saddam that was publicized. I think we came in the day after that or something like that.
So were you embedded with Marines or Army?
It was Army. Green Berets were the guys that we were with out of Baghdad. And they were the ones, we were one of the first people in Saddam's palace. And right next to it was Uday's palace. And we were the ones who discovered Uday's lions. Then there was smaller palaces down the way, and the Green Berets would go out and there was little animals, deers and stuff, on the property they'd shoot, and they'd feed the lions. And,
really?
Oh yeah, it was crazy.
Okay, so the lions, I gotta go deeper there. So were they in kind of a Roman gladiator type pit?
It was just like a big zoo pit.
Okay.
Like, it wasn't a pit. It was just a ginormous cage.
Okay.
That you'd see maybe like a zoo or something like that. And I think there was 2 females and a male.
Okay.
And so we'd go hunt. I was never with them actually watching them, kill the hunt, the animals and stuff, but they bring them back and they're, hey, come on, we're going to feed the lions. So,
you had to have your camera at the ready at that point.
Yeah. So we'd chuck in the stuff and they start feeding. And I remember one time, I always tell this story, like it is honestly the true fact that the scariest time I've ever had in a wartime situation is I was about, you heard my voice crack because it was like, I still feel it. I was about 5 feet from the cage as they were feeding and with my camera up, and the male lion just went at the cage and just did that big roar. I jumped back. I screamed like a girl. Your inside bones, like you feel the reverberation. You just feel it. And all the Green Berets were just laughing at me. And yeah, so I always say that's the scariest. And the lions actually gave birth. One of the lions gave birth while we were there.
Really?
Yeah.
So, okay, so I started off asking you one of the scariest moments of your time in combat.
Of my time in combat. That is.
And it was actually the roar of a lion.
It was
being fed.
Yeah.
You want to talk about going in a direction I didn't count on.
Right. But then again, it goes back to your first question, like, how do you feel in these situations? I remember the first time, and Baghdad at that time, everybody was running scared. There's dead bodies all over the place. Mm-hmm. Everybody's kind of running scared. I remember we're wearing, baseball caps and not armored vehicles, and we're patrolling. I remember the first time we were coming back from a patrol, and I'm in the back of a Humvee, and all of a sudden you just hear this snap, snap, snap. I'm like, what? Kind of duck down, and it's bullets whizzing by your head and hitting the trees behind you as you're rolling. And I just remember ducking down, looking up at my gunner, and my gunner starts going pop, 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 firing back. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, I'm really here. We're really doing it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to hurry up and photograph it. It was over. I didn't even pull up a camera to photograph what was going on.
You were in harm's way. And if I'm not mistaken, you received a Bronze Star for your actions. But I'm curious. Because you said you never had to fire the weapon, but your valor was such that you received a Bronze Star. Tell me about that.
So the Bronze Star it's cool and everything. The Army Combat Action Badge is kind of like the one I like. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've had to do everything from stick my finger in bullet holes, first aid stuff, to been firefights, blown up in car bombs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff. So, and it's funny, like all I remember out of those is kind of how fast I ran. I was a heavy smoker at the time, and that adrenaline kicks in. And there was this one in Mosul where we're doing a traffic control stop, and next thing you know, we get sniped, and one of our guys took a bullet to the back. And
can you set the stage for me a little bit there? Because when you say you're in Mosul and you get sniped, are you on patrol?
Yeah, we're out doing a patrol, just a random patrol, daily patrol, patrolling neighborhoods. And how do you get? And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how do you get to embed yourself with them? Are you going and looking at a patrol log and say, okay, well, I see a group's going out here. Have you made relationships with these folks to the point where they're saying, hey, Jeremy, we're going to, we got a patrol coming up, and, the lieutenant or captain reaches out to you? How does that work? That's an amazing question because, so we are dropped in. It's your time to deploy, and you're going over to Iraq and Baghdad. You're in Baghdad. Next thing you know, it's like, okay, Jeremy, your team's going to go up to Mosul and embed. So you go up there, you have room and board, right? Mm-hmm. And the next thing you know, it's like, okay, what do I do? So I would run over and start asking questions, knock on the base commander's
So you're going to develop business at
Absolutely,
this point.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to find out who's seeing action, who's doing what. I introduce myself, and it's not easy because you got to picture, I'm an Air Force guy walking up, looking pretty much like Gomer Pyle. I'm not lying. Helmet all cocked. Hey guys, what's going on? What you guys doing? They're like, really? Who are you? Air Force? Really? I'm like, yeah, hey, I just want to go out. And they're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And there is some hesitation from guys taking us out.
But you have to do it too in such a way where you're not compromising
their
security.
So again, you want to be an asset, right? And in combat camera, we're not only trained to be a photographer, but we can also be a vehicle driver.
Okay.
We can also do first aid. We can also be number 2 man in a stack going into the house. We train for all that.
So you were trained for first aid beyond just what you did in basic training, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but not very extensive. But yes, to save a life. Absolutely.
But I think the important thing that you said there is that you are striving to be an asset and not just a strap hanger.
Remember, you're out there doing something bigger than all of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, you have to show what our brave men and women are doing. That's what kept me going. That's what kept me bringing that camera up every time. That was the importance of my job. I remember getting a photograph release, and it was execution that we came upon, where a guy had been executed and laying in the streets. And I have to show this. So as a combat camera guy, I have to show kind of like the scene.
Right.
But now in my mind, I'm sitting here going, well, how do I get to show this? Because they're not going to let me release the whole photograph, right?
Right.
But that has to go up for military purposes. They need to see that. It might be classified in a certain way. How do I get this so I can get the American people to show or see what's going on? So I take it in different ways. Maybe it was a bloody arm coming down out of a body bag, and it spoke death, and went to my releasing official.
But it didn't personalize it because you didn't show the face.
Right. But how important, that was a big step in my progression over there, is how important, because we show guys walking the streets. We show, cool firing of cannons and airplanes and tanks. Oh, that's all cool. But how come we don't get the real stuff released? Soldier who just got his arm blown off, or a victory or a loss, right? Like Vietnam, that stuff was coming out. I imagine what was censored back then. And I'm not saying we were censored. We were never censored. It just depended on how it would go up. But again, that responsibility of how important is it to show what our brave men and women are doing? And they're at war. People die in war. So that was the amazing aha moment when I was able to get photos like that released to kind of show the perspective.
So you go into it with an expectation. And your expectation is, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to make sure my camera's trained this way. I mean, you've got this plan.
My expectation is to come back with honor. At the end of the day, everything else fails, or everything else is not important. At the end of the day is, did I and my teammates come back alive and with honor?
So what did that look like to you? So when you got there and you said, the most important thing to me is to return home with honor. That's a powerful word. And you use that word very specifically. What did that mean to you before you even got there?
I'll tell you when it clicked. The very first time I was over in Iraq, that mentality, that snap, that first deployment, that snapped, like, okay, this is serious. But also at the same time, when I say with honor and everybody, I can't tell you what the right thing to do is. I mean, look at these Medal of Honor recipients jumping on grenades or doing these heroic acts. Do I have that in me? I don't know. Is running the right thing to do? I don't know. Until you're in that situation, the most important thing is, if it is running or hunkering down, did my whole team, again, I'm attached to these guys, but I'm still their team. They're my team. Did we all make it off that battlefield today? That to me is what coming back with honor and coming back with safety. Did we do our jobs?
And do you feel like you met your own expectations?
I pause because we can always do better, right? I 100% feel I came back with honor. And I'm safe, so safe and honor. But I mean, there's people that I've photographed that didn't make it off. I talked a little bit about that story in Mosul where we stopped and the guy got shot. And all I remember, and I was a couple car lengths down, and I look back and he's on the ground. I know I have to get over there. Do I really have to get over there? Like, I'm sitting here now questioning, do I really have to get over there? At that time, I made that decision, looked up at the gunner and said, hey, will you cover me? And I ran down during a firefight to get close to him. And documented it, and everybody made it. It wasn't, some of those photos didn't get released, but it was, I want to say it was probably about a year before the pandemic. And I want to say his name is Sergeant McPool, I think it is. His family reached out to me, and he lost his life to suicide. So his family was very inquisitive to what happened to that on that day. So I sent them photos and kind of told what I remembered from that day. Yeah. So that's kind of, when it all circled back to, Bronze Star and all that kind of stuff, you don't go in there I go in there to do my job and to again, I can't say enough. The greatest honor I've ever had in my life is to show what our brave men and women do on the battlefield. And that's just one of those things. I will tell you that I came home and my grandfather was World War II, Army guy. And I was like, here I'm thinking, I have a long history of military, and I've just been awarded the Bronze Star, and I'm thinking I'm the highest awarded, Locke member. And I call him up. I remember I was sitting in a Walmart parking lot in Summerville, South Carolina, and I said, Grandpa, hey, I just want you to know I've been awarded this Bronze Star. And he goes, oh, one of those? He goes, yeah, I got one of those. It's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. He goes, but yours is probably more important. He goes, our whole unit was awarded one. So it's like, it was just.
But that's the greatest generation.
Absolutely. You know what I did with that Bronze Star that I was given?
I got an idea, but you tell me.
I buried it with him, put it in his hands in his coffin.
Did you really?
Yep, absolutely.
I have sensed a a pattern with you. The importance of telling the story of others. Your podcast focuses on others, the last letters. You've mentioned putting others before yourself multiple times. You're big into relationships, I can tell, and the importance of a very, what's the word I'm looking for? A relationship that is meaningful. So you talked about this young man who was covering you as you went to the capture the photos of the body. What kind of relationships did you develop with these guys when you were out there?
Every time I walk off that field, doesn't matter where I'm at, Haiti earthquake, Japan tsunami, the battlefield, every time I walk off that playing field, I have in my mind everybody came home too. So, that's why I got a little emotional with, I think it's Mick Poole's family reaching out to me, is because he's somebody that made it home. But he then lost his battle afterwards, and so many people are. But maybe it's a fairy tale. It's hard for me. I mean, you see, I'm struggling with this because I don't know what the right answer is. I don't think there is a right answer, but in my mind, we all come home.
So with September being Suicide Awareness Month, and I can hear you struggling with the whole idea of suicide. And for anyone who knows me, they've heard me say multiple times, the lens, if you'll pardon the expression, through which I viewed suicide for the longest time was a very naive lens. It was, for someone who takes their own life, it's a very selfish act, and they're hurting more people than just themselves.
I'm in that right now. I'm in that battle.
And I was in that battle until probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I went down and met with one of our nonprofit partners, Warriors Heart Foundation. Gentleman by the name of Tom Spooner, kind of took me on the tour of their location. Tom was a Green Beret combat veteran as well. He gave me a perspective that I never had before. And he showed me a book called War and the Soul. And Edward Tick is the author. And if he knew how many times I've plugged him, I might actually rate some royalties out of this book. But Tom was very clear about the fact that it saved his life. And I'll never forget when it all clicked for me. I was on vacation, and I realize you're the one being interviewed, but this is a powerful story, so I'm going to tell it.
I'm in your boat right now.
So I'll never forget when it all clicked for me. My wife and I were on vacation, and we were in Cabo. I got up early in the morning, went down to grab breakfast, and took that book with me. And the book was kind of a combination of mythology and a study of suicide from war, more specific to Vietnam than anything else. And I just remember just sitting in the most beautiful setting. And all of a sudden there was a part of it that I read when I kind of pushed back from the table and went, now I get it. And I realized what I thought was selfishness was a pain that was being relieved in a lot of cases for the benefit of others. And it was one of the most powerful moments of my adult life, because all of a sudden I had this guilty feeling of how naive I was to it. And when I tell you I was naive, Jeremy, I used to have to give, the suicide brief as a check in the box to the platoon. And I would say just stupid things. Hey, if you're going to do it, just do it. I mean, that's when I tell you how embarrassed I was, that's what I mean.
I've been living in that bubble of how I'm angry at people who commit suicide. I find it a weakness. But man, have I learned so much, because it's now hit me. The last 2 months, I've lost 2 people to suicide: Cindy Leonard and Jimmy Harper. And never in my life have I lost anybody that's close to me. These people I've shared, the world with. I've traveled the world with to cover stories. I love, like, you just taught me something that I haven't heard. And so it was the, they're committing. It's hard for me to talk because it's still fresh and painful, but what you said resonated with me over they're alleviating somebody else's pain off of somebody else. I've never heard that. And I guess it makes sense. Like right now I can see the thinking, to that. There's just so many more questions. I mean, I attend a Bible study and we talked about suicide, and I've reached out to other buddies, and so I'm learning more and learning, I guess, how to deal with it more. I still hate it. It's fucking, excuse me. It's horrible. And it's, not horrible for me. Like I'm sad that they're gone, but it's horrible for their families, and I'm flustered. You can hear it in my voice. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And
well,
I just praying that their families and something good will come out of it. I mean, is that even the right thing to say?
What I've come to realize personally is that with each of these people, there is a pain of some kind, whether it be a physical pain, a mental pain, or an emotional pain. And that emotional pain, I think, is the one that's it's the hardest to put a finger on, because you can kind of see a mental or a physical pain in someone, but you can't see an emotional pain unless you stop and look for it. And that's the one thing that I'm hoping we can all do and that's why I think September is such an important month. We've all got to start looking for it, because if you don't, you're not going to see it. So I want to go back to one thing that I came across, and in my research, you took a picture, and I had to look at it twice, and then I had to zoom in on it. And it was of a young child who I believe was sleeping. And there were just flies everywhere. So my question that I'd love for you to answer before you go on to the context of it, was that child alive?
Yes, the child was alive, but I didn't think the child was alive. I think when I took that photo, I know exactly the one you're talking about, and I think I counted like 70 flies. There was a lot. I can't remember, but I swear one time I counted of the flies on the kid. That was in Iraq, and it was on the rooftop of a house, and it was just, checking doing local check-ins on families and stuff, and searching the house, and we thought this kid was dead up there, and then finally moved. But that photo, again, this is why I love what I do. That photo generated a lot of aid and assistance to that family. And I think there was multiple families, just from our base, that we became friends and took things out to them. And it's, again, the power of an image, right? And that's definitely not one of my favorite images I've ever taken.
But it was so powerful.
To change, to make a difference, change. As a photojournalist, that's all I want to do is make a difference in the world with one of my images.
So you took the picture, and folks at the base, some military folks who are going out there to kill or be killed, see the humanization of what they're dealing with, and they support. How did that feel?
I don't. You're the first person I ever asked me. To me, that's my job, to make that difference. When you make that difference. But you did, and you knew you did. So, and that's what I'm saying. How did it make you feel? It made me feel great. I mean, that's what I want to do. I want to make that difference. And something so, I guess ordinary to them, that's what they do, sleep up there, and flies don't matter. But I do remember handing over toys and school supplies and food and stuff to them, and just when you see that genuine smile, you don't have to speak the same language, nothing but a good handshake and eye contact and smiles. I mean, that says it all, and again, that's, I think that's all human nature. I mean, that's what we want to do, is just make a difference in the world. I don't want to go through life just being mediocre, and I want to make a difference. And if that difference is in my kids, then I've succeeded. If it's in my wife, I've succeeded. If that difference is in my job, then I've succeeded. So making a difference in somebody's life, I mean, it's such an awesome feeling.
Well, as you're aware, Carry the Load is about restoring the true meaning of Memorial Day. And Memorial Day is about making sure that we honor those who never got to take off the uniform. And it's very important to us as an organization that we continue to say the names and remember those who made that ultimate sacrifice for people they didn't even know. They carried us, so who are you carrying?
If you would have asked me this 2 months ago, I wouldn't know. I mean, again, remember, in my mind, we all make it home. I also recognize, believe you me, I recognize the importance of the sacrifices. I don't think in my opinion, I don't think there's any other greater honor than dying on the battlefield for one's country. I don't want it to happen. But I mean, there's so many senseless ways we die, car wrecks or whatever. But it's a true honor, and it's sad that it has to happen. But at the end of the day, like 2 months ago, I wouldn't know, because we all make it home. Yeah, we've lost people. I'm very grateful those that came before us. I mean, we take our freedom, our 2.5 kids, our white picket fences, our PlayStations. We take that so much for granted here in the United States. But it's the brave men and women who have given the ultimate sacrifice that puts us here. Until 2 months ago, I lost 2 of my friends. And so those would be who I would now state that I carry, Cindy Leonard and Jimmy Harper. Unfortunately, they lost their lives to suicide, but their mission was, and the things that they did were no less important.
Cindy Leonard and Jimmy
Harper.
Again, with this being Suicide Awareness Month, I think it's very important that we as a society begin to understand that there are many lives that we lose as a result of the battlefield. And not just because someone did not pass on the battlefield does not mean that that's where they actually remained even when they came home. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Might even actually have an idea for you afterwards. But Jeremy, thanks. It's been insightful.
This has been incredible for me. As you say, I get a little emotional, and it's been a long time that I've had an interview we were able to sit down and just talk like two human beings and not have any fences up, it was beautiful. And I love a good cry here or there.
Well, you put a lot of other people first in your podcast, so figured it was time to do that with you.
I appreciate you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.